Hello, my name is Annie, and this is my midterm project for CIS 3367 with Professor Adrian Wheeler. My project will be focused on addressing the top U.S. business schools from the year 2016. I was able to obtain this list of schools from an article from Bloomberg on the best undergraduate business schools for 2016. In their article, they listed out the top 114 business schools, but my project will only focus on the top 15 schools, which I have listed here from number 1 to number 15. So my target audience with this project are high school juniors or seniors who are at the stage of selecting what colleges to apply to, and to those students who plan to major in the business field. So I hope with this data I created and charts I created will help these students to compare different important aspects of these colleges that will help aid in their decision making. So in my first tab, which I labeled Top U.S. Undergraduate Business School, I listed out the school names, the state, the total cost for in-state residents, the total cost for out-of-state residents, the acceptance rate, the graduation rate for within 4 years, the average amount of loans taken in the first year, and the average amount of student loans taken out throughout the 4 years. So using this raw data I created, I can use a function called pivot table to help summarize this info into separate categories to really help the students or users better compare between these schools. Pivot tables are very useful and powerful because it allows one to create different type of data they need. So first, I used pivot tables to isolate the schools and the total cost for each school for in-state residents. So for this pivot table, I drag school name to the row section, and I drag the in-state total cost to the value section. So for these amounts are for the students who reside in the same state as the respective university, and this is like the projected or estimated cost that they might need to pay if they were to enroll in it. So for these amounts, I sorted them out into an order from the smallest amount to the largest amount, and I did that by clicking the Home tab, Sort and Filter, and Sort Smallest to Largest. So by doing this, it allows anyone who uses this data to see which university had like the smallest in-state total cost, which in this case is University of North Carolina, and which university has the highest in-state total cost, which is New York University. I also took the average of the cost for all these schools to calculate the average total in-state cost, which helps users to compare the actual amounts to the total average cost. I did this by clicking this box, right-clicking it, value field settings, summarize value field by average, and I clicked OK, and it gave me an average total cost of $47,000. So moving on to my next pivot table, I basically did the same thing, but now for the out-of-state total cost, I drag school name to the row section and the out-of-state total cost to the value section. And now these amounts are basically the amounts that students who live in a different state, different from these schools, might have to pay if they were to enroll in those schools. Once again, I sorted these amounts from the smallest amount to the largest amount by clicking on the Home tab, Sort and Filter, and Sort Smallest to Largest. And I also got the average out-of-state total cost by clicking in this box, right-clicking it, value field settings, summarize value field by average, and clicked OK, and got an average total out-of-state cost of $60,000. And once again, these averages allow users to compare the actual to the average cost. So moving on to my fourth tab labeled Acceptance and Graduation Rates, I created a pivot table to help compare each school's acceptance rate and graduation rates. So I once again drag school name to the row section, which alphabetize them in, over here. And then I drag acceptance rate and graduation rate to the value section. So for both rates, I took the average using the same method I did for the previous two tables. So the main purpose of this table is to help users to determine how likely a school is accepting students and what percentage of their student body graduates within the reasonable time of 4 years in a more condensed, not so data heavy format like what we saw in my raw data, which had a lot of different information all in one. This is more condensed, concise, and easy to read. So moving on to my last pivot table I created. This pivot table was created to help compare the average amount of loans taken in the first year compared to the accumulated amount of loans taken out by the end of their 4th year. This helps users to foresee how much money they will potentially be loaning out and have to pay back at the end of the 4th year at each respective schools. So I did this by dragging school names to the row section, which again, alphabetized them here. And then I dragged the average amount of loans taken the first year and average amount of student loans after 4 years into the average, the value section. So onto my last tab, which I named it as dashboard. This consists of all the pivot charts, which were created from the 4 pivot tables I created previously. And I will explain how I created one of these pivot charts. So let me demonstrate for total cost for in-state residents. Let me just delete this for now. So let me go to the pivot table for in-state total cost. So first I click within the table, I go to insert, and I click pivot chart. And I want the cluster column, so I click the cluster column and I press OK. We don't want these field buttons, so we're gonna hide all field buttons on chart, and we're just gonna get rid of the legend. So I'm gonna delete this. Delete. I'm also gonna change the title to total cost in state. I'm gonna cut it. I'm gonna paste it into the dashboard tab. Gonna adjust it a bit. And now I'm just gonna make it a little bit more pretty and make it more consistent with the other pivot charts. So I'm gonna select the style 9 design, and that's basically it of how I created these pivot charts. So one last thing on this dashboard tab are the slicers. Slicers are another important function of Excel. It helps a user to filter out data and be able to compare different data between 2 different categories. So for this dashboard, I created 2 slicers, one called school name and state, which I did by clicking on the pivot chart, click insert, and then slicer, and I selected school name and state. And of course, I connected both slicers to all 4 pivot charts. So whoever's using this data, they could filter out data. So let's say if they want to compare between 2 different type universities, let's say Boston College and the university or Indiana University, they could do that. And they could see all different kind of data that pertains to these 2 colleges and compare them. But they could also filter out by state. So let's say if they want to only look at colleges from New York, they could just click New York and it filters out the data to just display the colleges from New York. So let's say for like total cost and in-state, they could see the cost differences between Cornell New York University, or the differences between the acceptance rate and the graduation rate. So that's basically it for my presentation. Thank you for listening, and have a great day.